Hey guys, the topic of this video is warning signs and symptoms of relapse. It's going to be a pretty short video, not going to drag it out a long time, but I thought maybe I would just put some varying topics out there and see if we can generate any interest in them. And all the topics that I'll be throwing out there primarily in all the little short videos are going to be related to treatment uh, from a client's perspective and as a clinician or former clinician from a counselor's perspective. So that's going to be the gist of it. And in this little discussion, we'll probably look at both sides of that equation. Probably more so, we'll look at the client, because this is the one that needs to be aware of the warning signs and symptoms of relapse. So, I don't know if a lot of you that are viewing this video that ever had a craving. It's an overwhelming desire to do something that you just can't seemingly delay in your mind. I don't know. Imagine if you love, I don't know, chocolate ice cream. That'd be a good one, or any kind of ice cream, really. And you're laying there, and all of it's hot. And my God, all of a sudden, thinking how that chocolate ice cream tastes. Boy, it's good, it's cool, it's sweet, makes me feel good. I ain't gonna worry about the sugar in it right now. I'll worry about that later. And you know you probably shouldn't go get that ice cream because you probably done ate more than you need to. Maybe you got a sugar, whatever. Maybe you got a few extra pounds that attributed to ice cream. Who knows? But in your mind, you play that out over and over and over, and eventually you say, "What the heck?" And you go get the ice cream. It's kind of like that with a craving, with an addict, except that it's with a substance that is more demanding and more controlling than some of our other, and I don't want to categorize vices as being less harmful one than the other. I really think that anything that we do, whether it's from drugs or alcohol to nicotine, I'm constantly holding a cigarette, trying to keep it off this camera. I really don't know why at this point. I mean, it looks better if I don't smoke on camera. But I realized I'm not in treatment, and I ain't on nobody's payroll, and I'm talking to folks that are addicts. So if I light this thing up, y'all, those of you that are offended by cigarettes, I'd like to say I apologize, but get over it, or do something different than watch this video. Let's get to the cravings thing. Now, how I know much about cravings? Well, I had a shitload of them myself. And I'm going to go back to my story when my first time trying to get sober again, back in 2012. Went to AA meetings. I told you I worked there at Salvation Army, and we went to meetings. Now, I wasn't made to go to meetings. I was living there as a staff member, what they call client staff. I guess that's what it would be, a staff client. I don't know how it turned out. But anyway, I was on the payroll, and I did the evaluations for the Salvation Army. So when people come in, yep, he's an addict. Yep, he needs treatment. Again, sometimes I look back and I felt kind of bad about taking the money, but in retrospect, I probably should have took a lot more. But let's get back to the issue, cravings. Going to the meetings, for the first 20 or 30 days, I remember sitting there in the meetings, and And this is after I'd gone through the shakes and been clean probably about 2 weeks when I first started to go to a meeting. I had alcohol totally out of my system, and any benzos I had done, although they have a long half-life, they were pretty much out of my system by the time I went to the AA meeting. And I remember sitting there listening to it, and it was like blah 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 blah. Blah. It was like a blah 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 blah. And all I could think about in my mind was, where's the closest whiskey store, and will it be closed? A drink sure would be good, and can I get one and get away with it and get back to the center without getting caught? And I went on that way for about, I want to say probably about a month. That was my thought processes. That's how strong the urge was to use. So cravings are, and again, with other substances, when you develop a physiological dependence, it's not about craving so much, it's about feeding the need in order just to feel normal. But when you get yourself to a point that you are semi-depickle, or detox is a better word, then you're going to start dealing with the psychological aspect of it. You're going to start having cravings. Cravings are normal. So we go to a group room, sit down, and they go around the rooms. Anybody, well, I went around the room and said this because I was still in group. I was still doing groups and still talking about what we're talking about now. And I know from experience that nobody wanted to say, well, all I want to do is drink right now. All I want to do is use right now. Addicts and alcoholics, or let's just say addicts because it's addiction, short for addiction. People addicted to a substance will keep that to themselves. They're new in treatment. They don't know what the therapist is going to say. I mean, it's one, they think they'll get in trouble. I tell them I want to use, they're gonna put the beeline on me. They're gonna be watching my every move and not put me out of the program. I don't know what they want to hear, and I think I gotta tell them what they want to hear, best I know, so that maybe they will move me on in this program. This is the mindset of a client. So a lot of times, clients won't talk about the fact that they're having cravings, and that is a big mistake in itself. So what happens if you deny a craving? Well, it's kind of like a baby squalling. You hear a baby squalling, won't you go change the diaper, go feed it, whatever. You don't get there just soon enough, it gets louder and louder and louder. But guess what? At some point, it's going to start diminishing again. And it's just a part of the cycle of the craving. But if we don't admit or acknowledge the fact that we're craving, then we set ourselves up again. Because remember, the secrecy is another part of the addict's tool bag to maintain their addiction. Secrecy, not wanting anybody to know. So what else happens that might lead to a potential relapse trigger? Well, let's just take a scenario of a client that's been in treatment, say a month. Well, he's been there a week or two, and he lives outside the center. He's not having to live in the center. He's not been, forced into an inpatient program, or he's not been, that level of care is what they call it. It's not been dictated for him and or recommended. Let's don't even say dictated because that goes against some whole other things. Isolation. He may have come there for a couple of weeks. He just sit there, don't talk to nobody. That's another thing in an addict's tool bag, isolation. We tend to isolate to ourselves. We have serious trust issues with anyone. Hell, we barely, at that time, trust our own notions about what's going on, and we rightfully so should question them. So, isolation. Next thing you know, John. I love using John for an example because, well, John ain't in treatment tonight. And you go around the room, you ain't got the 10 in a group, so you kind of notice somebody's missing. And it's a small group that night. Well, say he didn't come to Friday night group. Well, Saturday and Sunday goes by, and come Monday, well, John didn't show up again for group. So, what do you think's going on with John there? Well, if he didn't call, if he didn't try to let the counselor know that he wasn't going to be there, or even call to give him some lame excuses why he wasn't going to be there. My grandmother died. This is the fourth time Grandma died. I've used that, maybe. But something, give him something. They don't even bother with calling in with an excuse. And the chances are 8 out of 10, probably higher than that. I'm being generous here. 8 out of 10 that John has relapsed. He has answered the call of his craving. Now, cravings, they seem like when they hit you, they last forever and ever. I mean, you perseverate on that whole notion and play it over and over. So it seems like it's a long time thing. But the truth of it is, the average craving only lasts about 8 seconds. 8 seconds. So why do we feel like it's so heavy bearing on us? Well, again, it's because we play that over and over and over and over. We get stuck in this repetitive mindset about an obsession with that one specific thought. And we didn't address it. We didn't talk to anyone about it. We just entertained it, and we used our best judgment, whatever the hell that is, and we relapsed. We went out and used it. So, isolation, loneliness, secretness, really not knowing what to expect in treatment, those are parts of the factors that play into, I guess you'd call it relapse. I don't know. I've got some issues with how relapse is worded. I don't know, and anywhere in the NA or AA book that it's written anywhere that thou shalt relapse in recovery. And I see videos all the time on relapse is a part of recovery. Well, it can be, but it's not mandatory. If you do the things that you need to do, relapse is not a requisite to recovery. But if you relapse, then, well, obviously you've got to do some things. That's one of those another pivotal moments where you decide which way you're going to go again, what you're going to do about it. You're going to stay out there on a long run, or you're going to come back in and tell your counselor, yeah, I went out and used, and I just couldn't control myself, and I guess I might need some more help. Hell, I know I need some more help. I'm open for suggestions and what we need to do. And at that point, the counselor can go into a number of blah, 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 blah things they can do. But the focus of this, again, is cravings and identifying relapse symptoms in recovery. So, what are some of the things that normally lead up to relapse? It's called HALT. There's an acronym that we use: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Are you working too much? You're not you're not in balance. So you gotten yourself back into a little routine. And balance is important. Uh, Doing things habitually, because we are creatures of habit. We may not acknowledge that, but we are. Uh, and we tend to get comfortable with those habits. I mean, you probably get up and put one sock on before you do the other every morning, or you might get up and drink a cup of coffee before you do whatever you do, or whatever. We have habits and cycles that we develop and that are comfortable for us. So, hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. You get to working too much, you get this craving. And again, we're talking about somebody that's not totally crashed out. They're still out in the community. They're coming in for an outpatient program, and they got a job. So they lean heavy in that job. They put all their focus in that job to take their mind off what's going on here with them in recovery. And they substitute that for their focus so that they don't have to deal with a recovery issue. And the balance, again, gets asymmetrical, if you will, and tips one way or the other, and that oftentimes leads to relapse. Tired, that covered tired, and there's a lot of it, other examples. Lonely. Well, again, I mentioned that earlier. Loneliness is one of the tools in the tool bag of an addict to maintain his or her addiction, uh, because addicts like secrecy, they like being alone. Uh, Me personally, I never was what you call a social drinker. I prefer to drink alone. I didn't want anybody drinking my alcohol. Every drop was for me. Uh, and they came over, and they need to be bringing some. And that's just another characteristic of an alcoholic or an addict. So we talked about hungry. Let's talk about hungry. Well, I just hadn't ate. I just got this again. Our physiology kicks in, and if you know anything about addicts in recovery, uh, if you're a heavy drinker, eating is one of those things that after a while, especially in the latter stages of your alcoholism, becomes less and less important. Uh, you might have started out eating, put some food in your body when you started so you could absorb more alcohol. But after a while, it ain't about eating no more. It's about just being able to get more alcohol. You actually lose your appetite. In fact, when most people expire from alcoholism, when they've gotten to the stages of cirrhosis and whatever. Now, I'm not saying the cirrhosis is certainly not one of the main factors, but the human body shuts down. And at that point, when it gets ready to die, it's natural not to want to eat. So, keeping our eating patterns regularly, uh, eating healthy, doing things that don't trigger our dopamine so much. And if you've ever been to an AA meeting, you've seen them at the coffee pot. They go through about, I don't know, 40 pounds of sugar a month if they choose to buy it, because addicts love sugar and love cookies, love sweets, love anything that will substitute for that dopamine rush. So be mindful about the things that you take into your body and you ingest during that time. Angry. Well, addicts that come into treatment early on have issues with uh, confrontation. They don't really know how to confront someone with conflict resolution versus harboring resentment or being angry. So harboring resentments is a huge relapse trigger for addicts. So we talked about hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Now, what else we got going on here? Well, let's talk about environment. They tell you in treatment to avoid people, places, and things. Now, that's pretty difficult for a lot of people because a lot of their friends, especially the ones that are still an outpatient that had some semblance of functionality that we're maintaining, a lot of their friends drink, a lot of their friends used. That was a part of their social circle. Well, playmates and playgrounds is what they call it. You've got to cut loose playmates and playgrounds. Being around somebody that used. You can have the best intention in the world, stay sober. You get around somebody that pops top and it just triggers something in the brain, and it's off to the races. Same with cocaine. We try not to even flick a lighter in a treatment program because a lighter is a trigger. It's something that they used. It's something that they used as a part of their addiction that they had to have in order to use the cocaine or the crack. So being aware of relapse triggers, playmates and playgrounds, those things are important. Now, what's the deal about going to treatment? Well, going to treatment is in itself behavior modification because let's look at it. You got to go to rehab. First phase, they normally put you there 4 or 5 nights a week. I think back when I was involved with it, the state required a minimum of 20 hours, I believe, and it had to be contact hours, and usually that was through group, and then some individual counseling. That's a whole nother thing. But if you're in treatment 4 nights a week, then that leads you, I mean, you're not going to use in treatment. You might. You're going to get run out if you come in there and they see you peeing in the bathroom or drinking alcohol, whatever. Come in there smelling like mouthwash. In fact, alcohol products are no. So, going to the treatment 4 nights a week, you already have got those 20 hours taken care of. You know, you're pretty much assured you're not going to use during that time. Well, you're required to go to meetings. Well, and again, I'm going into a treatment protocol that probably outdated now, but it was pretty much in place throughout the years that I worked in a treatment program, which was on and off the last close to 28 years. So I don't know that much has changed in the last 17 months. If it has, well, then I'll try to get updated on it. But at this point, I think it's pretty much the same. So now we got to go to 3 meetings a week. That's a minimum that is on a treatment plan. It's pretty much standard protocol. It was before the state got involved and said we can't have cookie cutter treatment plans anymore. I don't want to get into that, but see, there's just a lot of stuff you can talk about here that might be relevant to somebody. Maybe a counselor, maybe an upcoming counselor, maybe a client, who knows. But you've got 3 meetings a week you got to go to. So we've got 4 nights. Here we're going to the IOP, Intensive Outpatient Program, after work. So we tied up at work. We go to meeting. We come home 9:30, 10 o'clock, go to bed, get up and do the same thing. And then we go to the meetings. Now, the meetings, a lot of people catch their meetings on the weekend. But the weekend is also a time, catching the meeting on the weekend, by the way, it is a good thing. It gives you some structured activity in that time where you have nothing. Idle time is the devil's playhouse for someone in recovery. So going to the meetings and having a structured routine and having a busy, meaningful routine is a major uh, advantage in helping to avoid relapse and to maintain sobriety. Uh, Meetings quite often have a set time. They'll start at, at least one I went to 10 in the morning, 11, depends on who's chairing the meeting and what they decide for that month. But everybody invariably will come. Most people will come. You'll see them drifting in a half hour early, some of them earlier than that, and they will sit outside and they will socialize. Now that socialization is important because now I don't have this idle mind. I got to get out of myself. I got to get into whatever else is going on with the other. We got to have this exchange. And the meeting, then the meeting goes about an hour. Sometimes run a little over, depends on the topic they're discussing, I suppose. So now we got some time taken up, but we still have a lot of free time. So free time that's unstructured is another potential trigger. So you can see uh, early on that if you don't get with the program, I mean, it's kind of like you out there holding on to let's say a piece of driftwood out in the ocean. Here comes the Coast Guard. They can't get to where you are for some reason. I don't know. That's why they throw you a life raft out there. Well, when you let go of that piece of driftwood, you better be getting to the life raft. You better make sure you can get to the life raft. That's the same thing with your recovery. And you got to want recovery more than you want relapse. It's really a matter of personal choice. And after a while, the more you get involved in the processes and get habituated to treatment and start developing a sense of self-worth again, you realize life might be worth living. And it's important to look out for the minefields along the way that can occur with you if you want to maintain sobriety. Maybe later on we'll do another video about a treatment treatment programs, what they call them, or IEP. I think that's a buzzword now, individualized educational program, or ITP, treatment program for the client. So if you got any thoughts on this, I'd love to hear them. Again, I want you to consider subscribing to the channel. It costs nothing. Share the video with someone if you think they might get some benefit out of it. Thanks, and have a good day.